En tiempos actuales, acompañamos a los distintos actores del mercado asegurador en la carrera por la transformación digital. Ser ágiles ya no es una opción. En la era digital, la velocidad de comercialización y el acceso global a productos y servicios son fundamentales para mantenerse por delante de la competencia y ofrecer una excelente experiencia al cliente. Smartix es una plataforma para crear experiencias únicas para los clientes, basadas en el producto y el canal de distribución, y se integra a la perfección con los sistemas internos y externos dentro de la empresa. Smartix permite a las empresas superar los desafíos de la industria y centrarse en la transformación.
La transformación digital nos inspiró a diseñar un portafolio con soluciones flexibles para nuestros clientes. Creamos un seguro de arrendamiento que se adapta a las facilidades del mundo digital. Diseñamos un seguro de auto que nuestros clientes pueden activar y desactivar cuando realmente lo necesitan. Los acompañamos en esos momentos inesperados por tan solo 123,000 pesos al año. Los protegemos ante posibles fraudes del mundo digital y cuidamos a cada miembro de la familia, incluyendo a los peluditos. Y lo mejor es que ahora nuestro portafolio podrá ser comercializado en Moon Digital, la plataforma que permitirá cotizar y vender todas nuestras soluciones. Somos tu compañía siempre, transformándonos en cada paso.
En Global Seguros tenemos soluciones para los que sueñan junto a su familia y saben que futuro es sinónimo de posibilidades. En Global Seguros encuentras la tranquilidad de proteger a los que más quieres. Nos comprometemos por ti, por tu familia, por el futuro. Empresa vigilada por la Superintendencia Financiera de Colombia.
En Experian creemos en el poder de la data para crear un mejor mañana. Capacitamos a los consumidores y a nuestros clientes para que administren sus datos con confianza. Ayudamos a las personas a tomar el control de su comportamiento financiero y a acceder a los servicios financieros. Ayudamos a identificar y transformar las oportunidades de nuestros clientes en negocios sostenibles. Potenciamos oportunidades y creamos juntos un mejor mañana.
Thank you, Mavid, for your invitation and also for your presentation and introduction. First and foremost, I would like to especially thank Fasecolda, Dr. Miguel Gomez, the president, for his invitation, and I would like to greet all of you who are watching us. Without a doubt, it is very important from the standpoint of the development of the fintech ecosystem in Latin America, in terms of everything that has to do with Insurtech technology applied to insurance, that has truly been a revolution from the standpoint of that combination between technology, agilism, design, and of course, the experience of users. Fintech services are of great convenience for different types of audiences. And Insurtech nowadays is one of the largest phenomena of social inclusion in Latin America. So what we are going to see up next is how the behavior of this industry has been happening. This such an important vertical for financial part. But first and foremost, we will look at the context as to how Fintech has been taking place and what Fintech is, which is basically an expression that could have broad definitions or that can unfortunately have contractions from the definition standpoint. So we are going to see this up next. First of all, I would like to start off by a clear concept today, and it is that what do we understand by Fintech? Fintech could be one of those fashionable and trendy definitions that we have today. And sometimes we don't know what it's about. For many people, that acronym between finance and technology is not entirely solved. And it turns out that Fintech has to do with the development of new business models that, leveraged on technology, of course, will allow to transform products or financial services that are traditional. And if you notice, in the presentation that you are all seeing, I would like to highlight two important elements. One, new business models, that is a paramount factor, which is innovation, and the second one has to do with transformation. What is transforming? In the end, it's about changing the way as to how service is expressed in the face of the customer, where the center is the user experience, the experience of the consumer as well. So this is something very important because only 20, 25 years ago, we were used to analyzing from the strategic standpoint everything from the theory of Porter, where what was important was the product or service, and maybe we would rule out in that diamond of Porter the importance that a customer or a consumer could have, or they weren't paramount from the strategic standpoint. But nowadays, at the core of any type of analysis dealing with products is basically the customer. And this, of course, allows us to have within the fintech definition certain characteristics that are necessary to pose as relevant for today. Because one way we're talking about fintech, we're talking about a service that is at the center of the consumer, where it will be very important for all the fintech industry to establish which are the different needs, the conditions required by the customer for the provision of a service. And that is one of the important goals that this industry has today. Second of all, and also being very relevant, is the topic that it is free of inherited systems. It has state-of-the-art technology. Fintech normally incorporates the latest technological trends. What's more, those technological trends that we call fourth industrial revolution, which include big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, everything that has to do with Internet of Things, and of course, and also very importantly, the role of blockchain within the development of what is known as fintech. And third of all, it is light on assets, which means that it has a huge financial leverage that, and these are normally companies that are working in special niches of the financial activity, and therefore they have a characteristic where they are light in the sense of their equity development. That doesn't mean that they're robust from the possibility of investment and also the possibility of their sustainable development. Fourth of all, and this is also very important to mention, that fintech is scalable. That is, they have a possibility of behaving dynamically in the sense that at an operational development, we can extend the infrastructure related to the development of this activity. And in addition to that, when we are talking about fintech, we can also say that if the operation is contracted, the infrastructure or architecture related to the activity can also be contracted. And also another characteristic that I consider to be important is that fintech is simple. That is, it is intuitive, easy to use on behalf of any user, and this means that there is an important development behind the solution that will be transferred to having a very simple proposal for any consumer on average. And lastly, and something very important, is that fintech is innovative. It incorporates innovation not only in the product, but also in the delivery model of the service or product that it's about. And lastly, fintech is characterized by something very important, and it is that it has a special regulation. It is normally classified as light from the standpoint of regulation, flexible from the regulatory standpoint as well, which means that, as we are going to see up next, that it is absent of regulation. No. One of the main prejudices that exists not only in Colombia but also in many parts of Latin America is that fintech is not regulated. That is like the Old West, where there's the good, bad, and the ugly, and we unfortunately don't have any type of norm that regulates something that would create insecurity. And that clearly is not true. And it's not true because of what you will see up next. Fintech, essentially, it has a regulation that from the financial standpoint, as you may have seen throughout this important scenario of debate, has the application of the so-called special statutes. That is, that for a certain or specific financial activity, the rules in Colombia have been defining for each vertical a specific regulation. So if you notice, for example, look at how digital payments, which is one of the fintech segments, and I will explain this chart in the following way. Everything that is in the text in white corresponds to a fintech segment. If you realize, there's 9 that are highly diverse and heterogeneous. And for each one of these segments, what we have in pink is everything that has to do with regulatory development. That is, all the norms or rules that are related to a subsegment within the fintech segment. For digital payments, we have Circular 008 from 2018. We recently have a Decree 1692 on the payment system of low value. We also have important rules such as Law 1735, which has to do with financial inclusion developed by the special societies for deposits and payments. So fintech for payments in Colombia has a profuse regulation, and it can also have oversight on behalf of the financial supervision in terms of what they call CEPES. Digital credits. Digital credits has close to 95 actors working for social inclusion in Colombia, and those 95 actors are divided in consumer lending, or all the loans for people, or business lending, that is loans for companies. In only loans for persons, we have 80 companies, which in the past years have had 4.5 million placements, where on the average it's 400,000 pesos. This is a phenomenon of social inclusion. In the case of those companies that are dedicated to business loans, for those companies, well, they are essentially dedicated to lending business persons, those small SMEs that don't have access to the financial industry that is conventional because they don't have the financial solvency. Or here in Colombia, there are fintechs for loans for companies that are capable of lending money to those companies that have zero income. And that is revolutionary from the inclusion standpoint. Now, besides that, we have the very important segment of RegTech. RegTech has to do with all the technology for compliance, for the regulatory compliance, that is, to prevent or mitigate risks that have to do with the financial activity, risks such as phishing, the alteration of electronic information. And here we have solutions for the knowledge of customers, solutions that also develop different types of anti-laundering or counter-laundering mechanisms, and that's very important in Colombia, given the broad digitization of products or services that because of the pandemic, we use more and more on a daily basis in an electronic fashion. We also have those companies that develop crowdfunding. Collaborative funding, that I would insist, is one of the fintech models around the world. And it's a very important model for the economic reactivation. It has been said that collaborative funding would allow that between or among many of us, we could carry out different contributions to investment projects that could have a better employability for all Colombians, and that would allow that among many people we can contribute to the capital of a certain project. And that is a mechanism that is quite important around the world. And here in Colombia, it has certain actors, and we need many more of those. So the call is out so that financial oversight can quickly establish conditions to enable those who are currently requesting licenses as collaborative financial situations. We also have the factoring part. Factoring are basically the electronic system for the negotiations that allow for the payment, and that nowadays become a very important solution to inject of liquidity to all those companies that have gone through difficult economic situations. The SMEs, the small SMEs, they have an access to this funding mechanism by way of a prepayment of billing. And lastly, within the column to the right, and not because it's the less important or the least important of all, but it's because it's the segment that is located within this presentation, we have Insurtech. Now, Insurtech, which clearly has to do with that combination of technology applied to the insurance industry. This technology applied to the insurance industry has been understood in Colombia, first of all, in the development or dematerialization of documentary flow from a previous insurance company, where nowadays we can already talk about a contract by way of electronic means, where we can also talk about an electronic policy and application of a law, that is Law 27 of 1999, with a principle. And it's the principle of equivalence, where e-documents are completely valid within the activity of insurance. What might seem something completely clear up until a few years ago, it wasn't as easy to carry out within an insurance industry that came from everything done in paper. And it is natural that being the industry of insurance, the one that is in charge of mitigating, transferring, preventing in an absolutely decisive way in terms of the risks related to any type of activity, well, to migrate from a physical format to an electronic format took some time. It has taken time. But nowadays, basically for all the insurance company, it is clear that the e-document is not only possible, but it is also possible to develop those contracts, policies, and absolutely all the documentary flow related to an insurance process by way of documents in the means of electronics. This could be highly relevant for the country. Our insurance industry starts to have that electronic profile that we were so much awaiting for. But it is important nowadays to not only stay at the omni-channel possibility to take everything from hard copies to e-copies, but the idea is to start using technology so that we can essentially start to develop all those transactional insurances by electronic means. That is, new products that sustained with technology will allow any type of person to use them in a dynamic, efficient way, and especially to at least allow a development of large convenience products. Let me explain, for example, one of them. One is the case of the transactional insurances. So if I'm in a sporting event that I would really like to go to with one of my favorite teams, or my favorite team, which is América de Cali, and if I want to go to watch that game at the Nemesio Camacho Campín Stadium, I perfectly know that going with my red shirt of América de Cali could be somewhat complicated. I mean, I could have some sort of risk but what we could do nowadays is that I could activate my insurance from my phone, and I can turn it off once I get home, and then I feel safe again. So that type of transactional insurance that uses technology should be clearly a very important part of the portfolio of insurance companies in Colombia. And not just that. Think about transactional insurances for flights, tours, and if I hop on a plane today, for example, once I hop in the plane, I turn on my insurance, and the moment I get off and I reach my destination, I can turn off my insurance as if it were just Wi-Fi. Those types of insurances already exist in the world, and that's the Insurtech that we would like to have in Colombia, that we would like to start seeing in Latin America. An Insurtech that is seen in other places, maybe in those Latin American economies that have a higher adherence to the insurance culture, such as the case of Argentina, other countries from the Southern Cone where there are experiences of that nature. But Fintech is not just about that. Fintech is also in market and trading, which is the seventh important vertical that also has standards for the development of the so-called robot advisors for insurance. And we also have the ecosystem of blockchain and crypto assets. The other day, somebody told me, but why are you talking about blockchain and crypto assets if that's illegal? I would say, no, it's not illegal. There is no regulation that points out that the operation, that trade, or the use of crypto assets goes against the law or that is somewhat unlawful. Crypto assets are an important means or component of fintech in Colombia, and they are a very important component in the sense that incorporates blockchain, and blockchain is the most of fintech. So that has to do with crypto assets. And it is of high relevance, and there is a sandbox nowadays, a control testing that develops 9 partnerships so that many of the rules from the supervisor with regards to those that are overseen can be clarified and that can be clearly developed in a common and normal way as it happens in many places around the world. These cash in and cash out with crypto assets. And lastly, we have a segment that is in vogue, that is at the forefront today, that has to do with neobanks. The appearance of new actors, especially of foreign origin, Brazilian, Argentinian. Just recently, some interesting news in terms of what is happening with the presence of Argentinians in Colombia. Well, give us an idea that this is going to be a very important engine of fintech throughout the following years. Nowadays in Colombia, there is already a first company with a license on operating as a neobank, and there are already other ones that are starting in our country and in Latin America. So we must say that the most valued fintech of Latin America is a new bank. In Argentina and in Chile, there are already several experiences in terms of neobanks that draw our attention especially. So what is Insurtech? Insurtech has a definition that could be maybe very broad, but that can actually have those two dimensions that I was telling you about. Insurtech could be to dematerialize or materialize insurance operations by way a document flow that is electronic, that where I can have contracts, policies, or it could be the development of special products using technology to improve the user experience. It is clear that both views are entirely supplementary to each other and they are completely possible. And Insurtech essentially refers to the use and application of technology within the insurance sector. Insurtech is the name of this group of companies, normally new companies, that apply technological innovations in order to develop a model of insurance to broaden their coverage, to reach out to new audiences, to reach out to new groups that will be benefited from the transfer or the transmission of risks so that a professional agency or entity can control them adequately. Insurtech has a purpose that is essential, and it is to have those new digital tools can optimize the performance of insurance companies. And I believe that is where we have an important amount of incentives that exist for the development of this industry. Insurance companies should see in Insurtech a path to improve costs, to improve their coverage, as well as to improve their services towards their users or consumers of these types of services, and of course to improve the conditions with which they provide their services to different populational groups. Now, in addition to this, we see Insurtech as the use, or in its functioning, we see the use of technologies to seek to improve processes and to create those new products that we as customers need. As we explained, that is peer-to-peer insurance, transactional insurance, that will allow us to improve the adaptability conditions from people to those types of risks that are entailed here. Now, Insurtech should allow the audience to manage different types of insurances by way of an online platform where I have a possibility to define what is my profile as a customer, what are my risk appetites, if you will, where I can clearly define how I can cover different risks within the daily activities that I carry out. Insurtech, besides that, should also allow me to increase the efficiency of processes in the value chain of insurance. Here, there is an important factor to promote new business models by creating a greater value for customers. Here in Colombia, for example, we are only staying with the business of comparators. That is important, especially to establish the convenience in terms of the offers of insurances to consumers, but it's not enough. It is important to start offering from the insurance companies through digital labs that many of them already have, because they belong to financial groups that have great innovation models that can be started to be applied in the development of new products. A new product that can emulate, in many times, what is happening in other places around the world. So which are the main technological innovations that can be integrated to the Insurtech chain? Well, we can incorporate innovations such as those of digital platforms. We can incorporate the Internet of Things. We can also include different telematic solutions, multimedia, that will allow that by way of devices to have access to different users, to the experience of insurance, to bring in machine learning and AI in order to not only improve coverage, but also to establish which could be those contingents and risks related to the activity, to develop big data and data analysis. The Internet of Things in assistance is essential because from my home, if I have a need of assistance in terms of if I have some sort of damage, I can take a picture. Still can't do that in Colombia, but there are certain apps that have something similar to that, but where I can actually take a picture and that in real time I can communicate the damage that has taken place to the company so that by way of electronics or that app, they will provide support to the situation that is happening. In addition to that, the idea is to be able to have robo-advisors so that they can advise us on the different decisions of purchase from somebody that is interested in the development of an insurance and the technologies, of course, in terms of blockchain and everything that has to do with smart contracts. And why not say this? Because smart contracts, the smart contracts that is, could be a modality for the execution of insurance contracts. That is where we should be thinking, that is the way that we should be thinking about that. And I invite you to be on top of the launch of a research that Universidad del Rosario carried out in their Juris-Tech will launch in terms of contracts, in terms of smart contracts, where they specifically analyze an insurance contract taken to the language of programming to establish which are the obstacles, the enablers, and all that. And this has different business models that have an expression that is absolutely technological, such as the equal or peer-to-peer, or insurance based on the use, or under the on-demand insurance that are part of the most important Insurtech expressions that we can have to date. The presence in Latin America of solutions on Insurtech is quite important. We are saying that only during 2020 and during the year that just passed, the Insurtech sector reached investments close to $94 million in Latin America, which involves or means a growth of 98% compared to that of 2019. That 98%, of course, shows us the power the ecosystem has to receive investment. And even though nowadays, alternative funding systems such as digital credit, crowdfunding are important or a factor, Insurtech starts gaining a very important space because we have realized that amid the pandemic, different types of risks should be specially protected. And also, I should transmit the risks so that a company can administrate them, and this is essentially what an insurance company does. So companies in Latin America that are dedicated to this Insurtech activity add 321 companies. Of these, only 6.6% are located in a single market. That is, our Insurtech have, besides that, a very important trend, and it is that they go out to explore markets in all Latin America. You may have seen how Insurtech companies that are present in Argentina are also present in Peru, in Brazil, and they are also present in Colombia, and in many places around the region. We will see how Insurtech start to explore the different markets, especially we're talking about multi-Latin American companies or that are present in different places in our region. Now, in Colombia, Insurtech accounts for 3.43% of the total percentage of companies that participate in financial technology in the country. We have 322 companies of these 3.40%, and this is a percent that also starts to grow exponentially in the country, has the development of technology for insurance. Now, a vision of the market is that Insurtech can be present in different links of the value chain. And despite the fact that many companies aim at the integrality of services, the main link of Insurtech has to do essentially with the sales of insurance. And here you can see that how technology applied to the insurance activity, what it helps us is to have the omni-channel presence. And that's fine. And this is the statistical information that is brought by the analysis from the different Insurtech companies. Essentially, this becomes a sales channel for insurance. However, and here is where we draw your attention, we have to start creating new products by using technology. This leads us to the Colombian marketplace, where there are different activities, as you will see on the screen, where there are different activities that converge, where technology converges with the services provided by the insurance sector. And there, the most important one has to do with consumer analytics. It also has to do with the acknowledgement of the different risk profiles that a consumer may have. It also has to do with the different insurance, types of insurance that can happen in terms of tours. We can also have some sort of what we could call insurances on demand. And we are also talking about the possibility of creating modalities of insurance that could allow us to verify the different behavioral rules of a person. The insurance market in Colombia, as it shows on the screen, is basically a picture to January of 2021. And I'm clarifying this because it is very likely, and this is something that we have debated on with all the innovation team from Ms. Fasecolda, that might be outdated. Outdated in the sense that this is highly dynamic and it has been bringing about new actors. But here, for example, there are companies that are working in new business models. They are working in the distribution, which is basically about improving the sales channels of the insurance companies. And there are other ones that are working on the different, or the mediation that is for insurance in what we could call the brokerage that existed physically before or in a conventional way. Now, our insurance industry, our Insurtech industry is one that is emerging, is one that is pushing forward, is one that starts to become important within the Fintech map on a regional level, and that will be very important to be taken into account in terms of its development for the following years, because it will continue growing, and most likely it will give us very good news on the creation of new products and on the way as to how we're going to supplement the omni-channels in this insurance sector. So which are the most important contributions from the Insurtech? Not only new products, but also the needs to assess how Insurtech can be able to work in the reduction of the different costs, how Insurtech can achieve essentially the assessment or the evaluation of risks in a better way to improve customer experience, to improve inclusion on behalf of some of the population segments that were before unattended from the development of these types of services related to insurance, and lastly, to improve efficiency from the operational standpoint from the different insurance companies, and why not also from the different financial consumers. To that, we have to add that the industry of insurance, in terms of the application of technology, has challenges that are essential. These challenges, as I would say, will mark the experience of the next 5 years of Insurtech development. On one side, the speed of the technological change. It is very clear that technology is proposing a dramatic change from the standpoint of the behavior, culture, what's more, in the way as to how consumers consume different products or services. So getting into Insurtech nowadays isn't just an alternative. It's simply an imperative from the standpoint of survival. It is an imperative from the standpoint of what a macro trend is that nobody will be able to stop anymore. Second of all, we have the difficulty to lure human talent, qualified human talent that is. It is important that the insurance companies who are linked to Insurtech should bring their best people possible so that they can combine the financial skills or that those that have to do with the technological tools and those related to the activity. And this is about having a multidisciplinary mindset and to combine from the standpoint of experience of the users, design, technology, the experience of users, and of course also Agilism. Here it is very important to mention agilism, the speed at which operations are carried out, because nowadays we have gotten used to, and thanks to the delivery applications, we can have quick experiences that are efficient and that are also good at the same time. And lastly, it will also be very important, and it is the protection of sensitive data and cyber attacks. To the extent that the different companies that develop Insurtech should start working on privacy by design, that is to work on the experience and to have better products that will allow information safety can always be at the forefront of the development of technology products for insurance. There is a situation that may become very important, and that has to do with natural disasters and the preservation of the environment. What we have recently seen is a call-out made from different scenarios in what we could call the climate change. And this, of course, is an essential exercise in terms of the preservation of the environment and the purpose that we should have also in terms of taking that into account to what may happen in terms of pandemics and new cycles of diseases related to viruses that will be joining us in this decade all over the world. Another important challenge has to do with the new competitors and the ways to compete. If I remain competing as an insurance company with a conventional offer, with conventional channels, well, I'm going to lose. So I have to start competing with new actors. What's more, nowadays, we talk about how insurance are inserted in solutions or banking marketplace as a service, and we can see how we can participate from that. Another challenge has to do with lesser profitability of investments in a scenario of high operational costs where technology should also be revised from the standpoint of costs, the timely adoption of standards and regulations, and the changes in the behavior of the consumer, which is what nowadays has to be measured, has to be observed permanently in the way as to how the behaviors of consumers are changing. And this is something that we could not leave aside. Today, we have consumers that are in an age that is very productive, that would like to consume products or digital services, and that would also like to have a digital experience at a 100%. If they say, sign this policy in the insurance company, in the office on 90th and 11th Street, and here we can give you some coffee, well, most likely I'm going to say, no, I don't want that experience. I want to have a completely digital experience. That is a change in the behavior that is important to bear in mind. Now, the future of Insurtech in Latin America. The trend points out that in all of those companies that do not join this transformation on a digital level can even lose half of their customers. And in that sense, it will be very important that the insurance industry can be inserted, can quickly adapt to the different conditions and the needs of their customers by incorporating technology, of course, to the business models, by establishing a skill that would allow them to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, not by establishing a risk or a factor of exclusion, but instead to improve the way as to how we appropriate technology. Investors are aiming at those products and are betting on those products that better respond to the needs of the current customers. A digital customer, ones that want to have an experience that is much faster each time. And companies will be much more competitive if they will adapt to these new trends, to these new global realities, and of course, they can incorporate technology that is state-of-the-art. Once again, let me tell you, Insurtech does not mean that it's just omni-channel presence. Developing an insurance contract by way of electronic means or to have a policy should not be the goal. The goal is to create products from technology, where technology can become a very important part of the development of my product, and that innovation should be a strategic axis of my organization. Only that way we will be able to attain the goal, and is to improve the benefit and to improve the coverage that all the insurance industry would like to have. Thank you very much to you. You have been very kind for your attention, and I hope that with this we can have some sort of pill, if you will, for the growth of Insurtech in Colombia and in the region. Thank you very much.